I came to the divorce hearing in an old suit, and my wife loudly said, "He's worthless." But when the judge learned who I used to be, she fell into a chair as if struck by lightning. "I'm glad you're here with me. Please listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled." I walked into that courtroom wearing a suit I'd bought 15 years ago. The fabric had thinned at the elbows, the color had faded from charcoal to something closer to ash, and the pants hung a little loose around my waist. I'd lost weight over the past 6 months. Stress will do that to you. My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, sat across the aisle with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Vance, who charged $400 an hour. Jennifer looked different than she had when we'd first met. Back then, she'd been warm, laughing easily, touching my arm when she talked. Now her face was set in permanent disapproval, her mouth a thin line. How had we gotten here? I remembered our wedding day 22 years ago. I'd been 32, she'd been 28. We'd married in a small ceremony in Vermont, just family and close friends. I'd promised to take care of her, to build a life together. And I had tried. God knows I had tried. But somewhere along the way things had shifted. Maybe it started when I left my old career 5 years ago. I'd been someone then, someone important, someone respected. But I'd walked away from it all, burned out and exhausted, needing something quieter, something simpler. I'd taken a job as a financial consultant for small businesses. The pay was decent, nothing spectacular, but it gave me time to breathe. Jennifer had supported the decision at first. Or so she'd said. But I'd noticed the way she'd started looking at me differently. The way her friends would ask what I did now, and she'd answer with a tight smile, changing the subject quickly. The way she'd stopped mentioning me at her work events. She'd been promoted to senior vice president at her marketing firm 2 years ago. Suddenly she was traveling more, coming home later, spending weekends at team-building retreats. I'd tried to be understanding. Her career was important to her. I'd had my time in the spotlight. Now it was her turn. The first real warning sign came about 18 months ago. I'd borrowed her laptop when mine was being repaired, and I'd accidentally seen a message notification pop up. Just a fragment. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was... Then it disappeared. My stomach had dropped. When I'd asked her about it later, she'd laughed it off. A colleague being inappropriate, she'd said. She'd reported him to HR. I'd wanted to believe her. More signs followed. Late-night phone calls she'd take in the other room. Expensive new clothes that she said were for client meetings. A distance in her eyes when she looked at me, as if she were already somewhere else. Someone else. I'd confronted her 6 months ago. She'd denied everything at first, then admitted there had been a brief indiscretion. Her words. But it was over. She wanted to work on our marriage. I'd agreed to try. What else could I do? I'd loved her for over 2 decades, but 2 months later, she'd filed for divorce. Now here we sat in this courtroom for the preliminary hearing, and I felt the weight of every eye on my cheap suit, my scuffed shoes, my tired face. I'd deliberately dressed down. Let them think what they wanted to think. Let them make their assumptions. The judge, a middle-aged woman named Susan Martinez, reviewed the documents before her. Jennifer's lawyer stood to make her opening statement about asset division and spousal support. "Your Honor," Patricia Vance began, her voice smooth and confident. "My client has been the primary earner in this marriage for the past 5 years. During this time, she has built a successful career, while the respondent has chosen to pursue less lucrative employment. We believe that an equal division of assets would be inequitable, given my client's contributions." I watched Jennifer as her lawyer spoke. She sat straight in her chair, her hands folded on the table, every inch the successful executive. She'd chosen a navy suit for today, her hair styled perfectly. She looked like someone who had it all together, someone who'd outgrown her husband. Then she turned and looked at me. Really looked at me, taking in my old suit, my worn appearance. And she did something I'll never forget. She leaned toward her lawyer and said something. Not quite a whisper, but not loud either. Just loud enough for people nearby to hear. "He's nothing. He's worth nothing." The words hung in the air. Several people in the courtroom turned to look. I felt heat rise in my face, but I kept my expression neutral. Let her think she'd gotten to me. Let her think I was beaten. Her lawyer continued talking about financial disclosures and temporary support arrangements. I barely heard her. I was thinking about what Jennifer had just said, about how little she knew, about what I'd been before I'd walked away from it all. Judge Martinez asked me if I had representation. I said I'd be representing myself for now. She looked concerned. Pro se divorce cases always worried judges, but she nodded and moved on to scheduling. As we left the courtroom, Jennifer swept past me without a glance, her expensive heels clicking on the tile floor. Her lawyer followed, already talking on her phone. I stood there for a moment in that empty hallway, looking at my reflection in the dark window. A middle-aged man in an old suit. Nothing special to look at. But appearances, as I'd learned long ago, could be very deceiving. And Jennifer was about to learn that lesson the hard way. I drove home in my 10-year-old Honda Civic, the same car Jennifer had wanted me to replace 3 years ago. "It doesn't look good in our driveway," she'd said. I'd kept it anyway. It ran fine, and I'd never cared much about appearances, at least not the superficial kind. The house was empty when I arrived. Jennifer had been staying at her sister's place since filing the papers. The silence felt heavy, oppressive. I'd lived alone before, years ago, in another life. But this was different. This was the silence of abandonment, of failure, of a marriage decomposing in real time. I poured myself a whiskey and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where we'd eaten breakfast together for 20 years. The same table where she'd told me she wanted a divorce, her voice flat and businesslike, as if she were ending a contract rather than a marriage. "He's worth nothing." Her words kept replaying in my mind. Not because they hurt, though they did, but because they revealed something important. Jennifer thought she knew me. She thought she understood who I was, what I was capable of. She'd spent the last 5 years watching me work my modest consulting job, coming home tired but content, living a quiet life. She had no idea who I'd been before. I pulled out a legal pad and began making a list. It was something I'd learned to do decades ago in my previous career. When facing a complex problem, break it down. Identify your assets, your liabilities, your leverage points. Emotions clouded judgment. Cold analysis cleared the path forward. What I was losing. Half the house value, roughly $300,000. My retirement savings, joint account, she'd want half, possibly alimony, given her lawyer's arguments 22 years of my life. What I knew, Jennifer's affair wasn't just a brief indiscretion. She'd been spending money recklessly. New clothes, trips, dinners I hadn't been invited to. Our joint accounts had been gradually depleted over the past year. She'd probably moved money I didn't know about what she didn't know, who I'd been before I left my old career, the connections I still maintained. How to conduct a real investigation. That I was already 3 steps ahead. I took another sip of whiskey and felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Anger was useless. This was colder, more focused. Jennifer wanted to paint me as a failure, as someone who'd given up, who'd settled for less. She wanted the judge to see me as weak, as someone who needed to be handled and dismissed. Fine. Let her think that. I opened my laptop and began searching. First, our joint bank accounts. I had full access. She hadn't thought to change the passwords yet. I downloaded 5 years of statements and began reviewing them systematically. There it was, a pattern of withdrawals. 500 here, 1,000 there, always in cash. Over the past 18 months, she'd withdrawn nearly $40,000. For what? I created a spreadsheet documenting every withdrawal with dates and amounts. Then I moved to credit cards. We had 3 joint cards. The statements told an interesting story. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, hotel rooms in the city. We lived 40 minutes outside Boston. Charges at men's clothing stores. She was spending money on someone else. On him, whoever he was. My old skills were coming back. Pattern recognition, document analysis, the ability to build a case from scattered pieces of evidence. I'd spent 15 years doing exactly this kind of work, just on a much larger scale. Corporate fraud investigations, executive misconduct cases, whistleblower protection. I'd been good at it, very good. Good enough that I'd made powerful enemies, good enough that I'd eventually burned out from the constant pressure and walked away. But the skills remained. I worked until 2 a.m, building a file. Every suspicious transaction documented, every inconsistency noted, every question that needed answering. By the time I closed my laptop, I had a roadmap. Tomorrow I'd start gathering more evidence. But I needed to be careful. Jennifer couldn't know what I was doing. Her lawyer definitely couldn't know. If they suspected I was building a case, they'd circle the wagons, hide evidence, make everything harder. No, I needed to continue appearing weak, beaten, someone who'd roll over and accept whatever settlement they offered. Someone who was, in Jennifer's words, worth nothing. Let them think that. Let them get comfortable. Overconfident people made mistakes, and I was betting Jennifer was already overconfident. I thought about confronting her directly, demanding answers about the withdrawals and the affairs. But what would that accomplish? She'd lie, deny, justify. She'd already shown me who she was. Actions mattered more than words, and her actions had been speaking clearly for months. I finished my whiskey and stood up, walking through the quiet house. Our bedroom felt foreign now. Her side of the closet was half empty. She'd taken her favorite clothes, but she'd left behind old photo albums in the back. I pulled one out and flipped through it. Our wedding day. Vacations we'd taken. Christmases, birthdays, anniversaries. We'd been happy once, hadn't we? Or had I just been blind to what she'd wanted all along? Someone more successful, more prominent, more impressive to introduce at her work events. I closed the album and put it back. No point dwelling on what had been. The question now was what would come next, and I was going to make sure that what came next was justice. Fair, thorough, documented justice. Jennifer had made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated me. She'd looked at my old suit and quiet life and assumed that was all there was. She was going to learn otherwise. The next morning, I called an old colleague. Daniel Reeves and I had worked together for 8 years at Morrison & Associates, one of Boston's top forensic accounting firms. I'd been a senior investigator. Daniel had been my research partner. When I'd left, he'd been one of the few who understood why. Marcus Chen, no kidding. His voice boomed through the phone. Man, it's been, 5 years? About that, I said. How have you been, Daniel? Busy, always busy, you know how it is. He paused. Actually, you probably don't. Heard you got out of the game. Can't say I blame you after that Buchanan case. The Buchanan case. I hadn't thought about it in months, but hearing the name brought it all back. 3 years of investigation, death threats, attempts to discredit me, and finally, testimony that had sent 2 executives to prison and cost a Fortune 500 company $800 million in fines. I'd been 47 years old, exhausted, and done. Yeah, I needed a change, I said. Listen, Daniel, I need a favor, a personal one. Anything, man, what's up? I'm going through a divorce. It's complicated. I need someone who can do some discreet financial analysis, someone I can trust. There was a pause. Then, you think she's hiding assets? I think she's been withdrawing large amounts of cash and running up credit card bills on someone else. I need to know the full picture before settlement negotiations start. Send me what you've got. Daniel said, I'll take a look. No charge. Consider it payback for all those times you covered for me when I needed to leave early for my kids' soccer games. I emailed him the bank statements and credit card records. Within 3 hours, he called back. Marcus, you need to see this in person. Can you come to my office? His tone told me everything. This was bigger than I'd thought. I drove into Boston, to the same building where I'd worked for 15 years. Walking through those glass doors felt surreal. The lobby had been renovated, new marble floors, modern art on the walls, but the energy was the same. Busy professionals moving with purpose, everyone slightly stressed, everyone carrying the weight of someone else's secrets. Daniel met me at reception. He'd aged well, a little grey at the temples, but still fit, still sharp-eyed. He led me to a small conference room and closed the door. Okay, he said, pulling up documents on his laptop. Your wife is either really stupid or really confident. Probably both. He showed me a series of transfers. Money moving from the joint account to her personal account, then to a new account I'd never heard of. Over the past 2 years, she'd siphoned off nearly $120,000. That's not even the interesting part. Daniel continued. He pulled up credit card statements. Look at these charges. Restaurants, hotels, sure. But look at this. Jewelry purchases. Expensive ones. Cartier, Tiffany's. 3 different purchases over the past year, totaling about $60,000. She never bought herself that kind of jewelry. I said. Exactly, because she wasn't buying it for herself. Daniel pulled up another document. I did some cross-referencing. The dates of these jewelry purchases, they align with cash withdrawals from your joint account. My guess? She's buying gifts for someone, probably her affair partner, but she's too smart to use the credit card for the whole purchase. She uses the card for part of it, then supplements with cash. I stared at the numbers. It was all there, documented, time-stamped, irrefutable. There's more, Daniel said. I pulled her social media, public posts only. She was careful but not careful enough. Look at these photos from the past 6 months. He showed me Jennifer's Instagram account. I rarely checked social media anymore, and I'd never paid much attention to what she posted. Now I looked closely. Photos from restaurants, carefully cropped, but in the background of one photo, a mirror reflection. A man's shoulder, part of a suit jacket. In another photo taken at a work event, she was standing close to someone. The photo cut off at his chest, but I could see his hand on her lower back. An intimate gesture. Can you identify him? I asked. I'm working on it. Give me another day or 2. But Marcus, here's the thing. Her spending pattern changed dramatically about 2 years ago. Before that, she was relatively frugal. Then, suddenly, expensive dinners, clothes, trips. The affair didn't start 18 months ago like she told you. It's been going on for at least 2 years, maybe longer. 2 years. While I'd been working my quiet job, coming home to cook dinner, planning anniversary trips she'd been too busy to take. 2 years of lies. I need all of this documented, I said. Clean reports, organized timelines, everything admissible in court. Already on it, Daniel said. But Marcus, you know what this means for the divorce, right? If she's been hiding assets and committing financial infidelity, the judge won't look kindly on her arguments for more than 50%. I know. Does she know who you used to be? What you're capable of? No, I said. She thinks I'm just a small-time consultant who gave up. She has no idea I spent 15 years doing exactly this kind of work. Daniel smiled. Man, she really doesn't know who she's dealing with, does she? No, she doesn't. I left his office with a thumb drive containing everything Daniel had found so far. As I drove home, I thought about Jennifer's face in the courtroom, the way she'd said, "He's worth nothing," loud enough for others to hear. She'd wanted to humiliate me, to establish dominance early. What she'd actually done was give me motivation. That evening, I received an unexpected text from Jennifer. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the house. I stared at the message. Why now? Had she somehow heard I'd been gathering information? Was someone watching me? Or was this something else entirely? I texted back, fine, see you then. Whatever she wanted, I'd be ready. And I'd be recording every word. Jennifer arrived at exactly 2 o'clock, pulling up in her new Lexus, another purchase I'd only recently learned about. She'd leased it 4 months ago using money from the account she'd opened without telling me. She walked to the door with the confidence of someone who owned the place, which I supposed she believed she did. I'd set up my phone in the kitchen bookshelf, positioned to capture the whole room. Audio recording was legal in Massachusetts as long as one party consented. That party was me. Thank you for meeting, she said, setting her designer purse on the counter. She didn't sit. I wanted to discuss the settlement privately, without lawyers. All right, I said, staying neutral. What did you have in mind? I think we can handle this like adults, Marcus. We both want to move on with our lives. I'm willing to be reasonable if you are. She pulled out a folder. I've had a settlement proposal drawn up. You keep your retirement account, I keep mine. We sell the house and split the proceeds. And I think, given the income disparity over the past 5 years, modest alimony is fair. Say $2,000 a month for 3 years. I took the document and read through it. On the surface it looked reasonable. Equal division of most assets. But I noticed what was missing. No mention of the separate account she'd opened. No mention of the $120,000 she'd moved. No mention of the cash withdrawals or the credit card debt she'd racked up. This assumes all our accounts are joint, I said carefully. Is that accurate? Of course, she said without hesitation. We've always been transparent with each other about money. There it was, a direct lie, recorded on video. What about your separate account? I asked. The one at Boston Private Bank? Her face went still. Just for a second, but I saw it. The micro-expression of someone who's been caught off guard. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. I don't have a separate account. Jennifer, I know about the transfers. I know about the cash withdrawals. I know about the jewelry purchases. Her expression changed. The mask of reasonableness slipped, replaced by something harder. Have you been spying on me? I've been reviewing our joint financial records. Records I have every legal right to access. She grabbed her purse. This is exactly the kind of paranoid behavior that ruined our marriage. You can't let go of control. You can't trust anyone. I trusted you, I said quietly. For 22 years, I trusted you. Sign the settlement, Marcus. This is a generous offer. If we go to court, it'll cost both of us a fortune in legal fees, and you'll end up with less than what I'm offering now. I'll need time to review this with a lawyer, I said. You don't have a lawyer. You said you were representing yourself. I've changed my mind. Her jaw tightened. Fine. Have your lawyer contact Patricia. But don't drag this out. I want this finished. She left without another word. Through the window, I watched her sit in her car for a full 5 minutes, phone to her ear, animated conversation with someone. Her lawyer, probably. Or maybe the other man. That evening, I received an email from Patricia Vance, Jennifer's attorney. It was curt and aggressive, nothing like the professional courtesy lawyers usually extended to each other. It informed me that if I intended to make baseless accusations regarding my wife's finances, they would be forced to file a motion for sanctions. It also hinted that they might pursue a restraining order if I continued to harass Jennifer. The message was clear. They knew I was building a case, and they were trying to intimidate me into backing down. 2 days later, it escalated. I received a certified letter from Patricia Vance's firm. It contained allegations that I had been verbally abusive during our meeting, a complete fabrication, and that Jennifer feared for her safety. They were requesting an emergency hearing for a temporary restraining order. I felt a chill. A restraining order, even a temporary one, would destroy my credibility with the judge. It would paint me as dangerous, unstable, everything they needed to win. But I had something they didn't know about. The video recording of our entire conversation. Every word, every expression, every lie Jennifer had told. I called a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but Rachel Morrison, the daughter of the Morrison who'd founded Morrison and Associates. Rachel had left her father's firm to start her own family law practice. She was brilliant, aggressive, and she owed me a favor from years ago when I'd helped her father with a particularly nasty case. "Marcus Chen," she said when she picked up. "I heard you were going through a divorce. I was wondering when you'd call." I told her everything. The financial evidence, the recordings, the restraining order threat. "They're bluffing," Rachel said. "The restraining order won't hold up once we present that recording, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to beat them to the punch. Tomorrow morning, we're filing for a full forensic accounting of all marital assets. We're also going to request sanctions against opposing counsel for threatening frivolous legal action." Will that work? "Marcus, you documented everything. You have evidence they don't know you have. And most importantly, they underestimated you. They think you're some broken-down ex-husband they can bully into submission. They have no idea who they're actually dealing with." The emergency hearing happened 3 days later. Patricia Vance presented her case for a restraining order, describing me as controlling and potentially dangerous. She was eloquent, professional, convincing. Then Rachel stood up. "Your Honor, I have a video recording of the meeting in question. I'd like to submit it as evidence." The judge watched the entire recording. All 15 minutes. Jennifer's lies about the separate account, her attempts at manipulation, her lack of any fear whatsoever. Most tellingly, her admission that she wanted a quick settlement. The judge denied the restraining order. She also issued a warning to Patricia Vance about making unsubstantiated allegations. As we left the courthouse, I saw Jennifer standing with her lawyer near their car. Patricia looked furious. Jennifer looked scared. Good. Now she was beginning to understand. I took the next few days off from everything. Rachel's advice: recover, rest, prepare for the next phase. I went to a cabin in Vermont that belonged to an old friend. No phone calls, no emails, just quiet and space to think. Because I knew this wasn't over. Jennifer and her lawyer had retreated, but they wouldn't give up. They'd regroup, find a new strategy, and I needed to be ready. I returned from Vermont on a Wednesday morning, feeling clearer than I had in months. The mountain air had done its job. I'd hiked, slept properly, and most importantly, stopped second-guessing myself. Jennifer had made her choices. Now I was making mine. There was a message waiting when I checked my phone. Not from Jennifer or her lawyer, from her sister, Diane. "Marcus, it's Diane. I know things are difficult right now, but I'd really like to talk to you. Could we meet for coffee? I'm not taking sides, I just think maybe I can help. Please call me back." I stared at the message. Diane and I had always gotten along well. She was 3 years younger than Jennifer, divorced herself, worked as a teacher. We'd had good conversations over the years at family gatherings, but she was still Jennifer's sister. Why was she reaching out now? I called her back. We agreed to meet the next day at a coffee shop halfway between her place and mine. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, nursing a latte. She looked tired, older than I remembered. When she saw me, she stood and gave me a brief hug. "Thanks for coming," she said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "Diane, if Jennifer sent you to—" "She doesn't know I'm here," Diane interrupted. "In fact, she'd probably kill me if she knew. Marcus, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without judgment." I sat down. "Okay, Jennifer's been lying to you, not just about the affair, about a lot of things." She took a breath. "The affair started 3 years ago, not 18 months. The man's name is Blake Hensley. He's a vice president at her company. Married, 2 kids. Jennifer thinks it's love. I think it's a midlife crisis wrapped in expensive dinners and hotel rooms." 3 years. Daniel had been right. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you're a good man, Marcus. You were always good to her. good to our whole family, and because Jennifer's planning something. Diane leaned forward. She came to my place 2 nights ago. She was angry about the restraining order failing. She said she needed to handle you differently. She asked me to call you, to sympathize with you, to convince you to take her settlement offer. She said if you drag this out, she'll make sure the judge knows about your anger issues. I don't have anger issues. I know that. You're probably the most even-tempered person I've ever met. But she's going to manufacture evidence. She's going to create a narrative that makes you look unstable. Diane pulled out her phone and showed me text messages from Jennifer. Look, she's asking people to write statements saying you were controlling during the marriage. She's offering to pay for their testimony. I read the messages. Jennifer was systematically building a false case against me. Character assassination. One witness at a time. This is witness tampering, I said. I know. That's why I'm here. Marcus, I love my sister, but what she's doing is wrong. She's become someone I don't recognize. The woman who married you wouldn't have done this. Diane's eyes were red. I'm scared she's going to destroy herself, and she's going to try to destroy you in the process. Will you testify to this? I asked. If it goes to trial. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, if it comes to that, yes. But Marcus, there's something else you should know. Blake Hensley. His wife found out about the affair last month. She's filing for divorce, too, and she's not being quiet about it. Word is spreading at Jennifer's company. This was news. Blake's wife knowing changed the dynamics considerably. Does Jennifer know that Blake's wife knows? I don't think so. Blake's been hiding it from her. He doesn't want Jennifer to panic. Diane finished her coffee. Look, I know this is a lot, but I couldn't just sit by and watch her do this. You deserve to know what's coming. After Diane left, I sat in my car and called Rachel. They're going to manufacture evidence, I told her. Character witnesses, fake testimonies. Good, Rachel said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Let them. Every fake witness is a liability. We'll depose them, catch them in inconsistencies, and then we'll bury Jennifer with proof of witness tampering. Marcus, this is actually perfect. She's desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. That evening I got another visitor, this time at the house. A Mercedes pulled into the driveway, expensive, black, intimidating. A man got out, early 50s, tailored suit, the kind of confidence that came from money and power. Blake Hensley. It had to be. He rang the doorbell. I considered not answering, but curiosity won out. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Marcus Chen? He asked. That's right. Blake Hensley. I think we need to talk. I don't think we do. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Look, I know this is awkward, but Jennifer's told me about your situation. I want to help. I'm prepared to offer you $200,000. Cash. You take it, sign the settlement papers, and everyone moves on with their lives. No drama, no court battles. A bribe. He was actually offering me a bribe. You're trying to buy me off, I said. I'm trying to make this easier for everyone. That's a lot of money, Marcus. More than you'd get fighting this in court. Take it. Start over. Find someone who actually appreciates you. I looked at him. This man who'd been sleeping with my wife for 3 years, who'd spent my money on jewelry and hotels, who was now standing on my doorstep trying to pay me to disappear. Get off my property, I said quietly. Don't be stupid, Blake said, his voice hardening. Jennifer's going to win this. She has better lawyers, more money, more credibility. All you're doing is dragging out the inevitable. Take the money. I said, get off my property. He stared at me for a long moment, then shrugged. Your funeral. He walked back to his Mercedes. When this is over and you have nothing, remember you had a chance to walk away with something. I watched him drive away, then went inside and immediately called Rachel. They just tried to bribe me, I said. Please tell me you recorded it. Every word, video and audio. Marcus, you beautiful bastard. That's attempted bribery in a divorce proceeding. We can use this. They're panicking. First the witness tampering, now this. They're making mistake after mistake. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet house and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Certainty. They'd thrown everything at me. Threats, manipulation, bribes. None of it had worked. I wasn't breaking. I wasn't backing down, and they were starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, they'd underestimated me completely. 3 days after Blake's visit, Jennifer called. Her voice was different, softer, almost like the woman I'd married. Marcus, can we please talk, face to face, without lawyers? I don't think that's a good idea. Please, I've been thinking a lot about everything, about us. Maybe we've both made mistakes. Maybe we can still work this out. I almost laughed. After everything, the lies, the stolen money, the manufactured evidence, the bribe. Now she wanted to reconcile? But I was curious. What was the play here? Okay, I said. When? Tonight? 7 o'clock? At the house? Fine. I called Rachel immediately. She's coming over tonight. Says she wants to reconcile. She's lying, Rachel said flatly. This is manipulation. She wants you to drop your guard, maybe get you to say something she can use against you. Marcus, record everything, and don't, under any circumstances, let her make you the bad guy. Jennifer arrived precisely at 7, carrying takeout from our favorite Italian restaurant, the one we used to go to for anniversaries. She was dressed casually, jeans, a soft sweater, her hair down. The corporate executive armor was gone, replaced by something that looked almost vulnerable. I brought dinner, she said. I thought maybe we could just talk like we used to. I let her in, my phone already recording from its position on the bookshelf. We sat at the kitchen table. She unpacked the food. Chicken parmesan, garlic bread, Caesar salad. All my favorites. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said, serving the food onto plates like she'd done 1,000 times before. About our marriage, about what went wrong. Marcus, I think we both got lost somewhere along the way. Jennifer, you've been having an affair for 3 years, I said. You hid money. You tried to get a restraining order against me with false allegations. Your boyfriend tried to bribe me. What exactly do you think we're fixing here? She set down her fork. The soft, vulnerable mask was slipping. Blake told me about that. That was his idea, not mine. I told him it was inappropriate. But you didn't stop him. Marcus, I'm trying to apologize here. I'm trying to take responsibility. Are you? Or are you trying to manipulate me into dropping the forensic accounting request? Her eyes went cold. Is that what your lawyer told you? That I'm manipulating you? Rachel didn't have to tell me anything. I've known you for 22 years, Jennifer. I can read you. She stood up abruptly. You know what your problem is? You think you're so smart. You think you see through everything, but you're just a bitter, paranoid man who can't accept that his wife outgrew him. There it was. The real Jennifer, not the soft, apologetic version she'd tried to present. You came here to make one last play, I said calmly. You thought if you played the role of the regretful wife, I'd fold. Sign the papers, walk away quietly. But it's not going to work. You're going to regret this, she said, her voice shaking with anger. I tried to be nice. I tried to give you a way out that let you keep your dignity. But if you want to fight, fine, we'll fight. And Marcus, you're going to lose. I have better lawyers. I have better resources. I have witnesses who will say whatever needs to be said. Witnesses you're paying, I said. Prove it. I will. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then turned back. You think you're so much better than me, but you're not. You're a man who couldn't handle success, who ran away from his career because it got too hard. You're weak, Marcus. You always were. I just didn't see it until recently. And you're a woman who stole from her husband, lied for 3 years, and is now committing multiple felonies trying to cover it up. So I guess we both have our flaws. Her face twisted with rage. You're going to end up with nothing. Do you understand that? Nothing! I'm going to make sure of it! She slammed the door on her way out. I heard her car start, then the screech of tires as she peeled out of the driveway. I sat there in the quiet kitchen, looking at the untouched Italian food, and felt my hands shaking. Not from anger, from something else. Fear, maybe. She was right about one thing. She had resources, connections, money. She could make this very difficult. But she'd also just shown her true face on camera. Every word, every threat, every admission that she was manufacturing evidence. All recorded. I called Rachel. She just melted down. I said. Completely. Threatened me. Admitted to paying witnesses. Said she was going to make sure I ended up with nothing. Tell me you got it recorded. Every word. Marcus, that's it. That's the smoking gun. She just handed us the entire case. Tomorrow morning, we're filing a motion to depose every witness she's lined up. We're also going to request an emergency hearing to freeze all assets until the forensic accounting is complete. After the call, I sat in the dark house and thought about what Jennifer had said. That I was weak, that I'd run away from success because it got too hard. Maybe there was some truth to that. I had walked away from my old career, but it wasn't weakness. It was a choice to preserve my sanity, to have a life that wasn't consumed by other people's corruption and lies. Now, ironically, I was right back in that world, building cases, documenting evidence, preparing for battle. But this time, it was personal. This time, I wasn't fighting for a client or a corporation, I was fighting for myself. And Jennifer had just made a critical mistake. She'd let me see her desperation. She'd let the mask fall. And desperate people didn't just make mistakes, they made big, spectacular, case-losing mistakes. I cleaned up the uneaten Italian food and threw it away. Then I backed up all my recordings to 3 different locations: cloud storage, external drive, and Rachel's secure server. The fear I'd felt earlier was transforming into something else. Determination, resolve, cold, focused purpose. Jennifer thought she was going to win because she had money and resources. What she didn't understand was that I'd spent 15 years taking down people with far more money and far more resources than she'd ever have. And I'd never lost a case. The emergency hearing was scheduled for Monday morning. Judge Martinez's courtroom was packed, not just with lawyers, but with Jennifer's witnesses. 7 people she'd recruited to testify about my alleged controlling behavior. I recognized some of them. Colleagues from her work, a neighbor, her cousin. Jennifer sat with Patricia Vance at the plaintiff's table, dressed impeccably as always. Blake Hensley was in the gallery, there for moral support, presumably. They'd been careful, sitting apart, no obvious connection, but I could see the way he watched her, the way she glanced back at him. Rachel had prepared meticulously. We had 3 bankers' boxes full of evidence, financial records, recordings, depositions, witness statements, everything organized, indexed, ready to deploy. Judge Martinez entered. We all stood. This is an emergency hearing regarding Chen Vaz Chen, she began. The respondent has filed motions to freeze assets and to sanction the plaintiff for witness tampering. These are serious allegations. Ms. Vance, you may present your opposition. Patricia Vance stood, confident as ever. Your Honor, these allegations are absurd and represent a desperate attempt by the respondent to avoid a fair settlement. My client has done nothing improper. The respondent has become increasingly paranoid and vindictive as these proceedings have continued. Your Honor, Rachel interrupted, standing. I have video evidence that directly contradicts counsel's characterization. May I present it? Judge Martinez looked intrigued. Proceed. Rachel set up her laptop, projecting onto the courtroom screen. First, she played the recording of Jennifer's visit when she'd claimed not to have a separate bank account. Jennifer's clear lie, captured on camera. Murmurs spread through the courtroom. Then Rachel played Jennifer's meltdown from 3 nights ago. Every threat, every admission about paying witnesses, every moment of rage. The courtroom went silent. I watched Jennifer's face drain of color. Patricia Vance was furiously writing notes. "Your Honor," Rachel continued, "we also have testimony from Diane Sullivan, the plaintiff's sister, regarding the plaintiff's explicit requests for false testimony." She nodded, and Diane stood up from the gallery. Jennifer's head snapped around, her expression one of complete betrayal. But Rachel wasn't done. She presented bank records showing the hidden account, the transfers, the cash withdrawals. She showed credit card statements with jewelry purchases. And then she showed the timeline of Blake Hensley's involvement. "Your Honor, we'd like to call Mr. Blake Hensley to the stand." "Your Honor, this is highly irregular," Patricia objected. "This is a civil hearing, not a trial. I'm curious to hear what Mr. Hensley has to say." Judge Martinez said, "Mr. Hensley, please take the stand." Blake walked forward slowly. He'd been confident when he'd come to my house with his bribe money. Now he looked like a man walking to his execution. Rachel was surgical in her questioning. "Mr. Hensley, what is your relationship with the plaintiff?" "We're colleagues." "Just colleagues? You've never been involved romantically?" He glanced at Jennifer, then at his own lawyer in the gallery. "I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Did you visit the respondent at his home on the evening of October 15th? I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. Did you offer the respondent $200,000 to drop this case? I invoke my Fifth Amendment right." Each invocation was an admission. The courtroom knew it. Judge Martinez knew it. Most importantly, Jennifer knew it. Rachel played the recording of Blake's visit. His bribe offer, his threats, everything. Blake's face went red. In the gallery, I saw a woman I didn't recognize suddenly stand up and walk out. Blake's wife, I realized. She'd come to watch. "Your Honor," Rachel said, "attempted bribery in a divorce proceeding is a serious crime. We request that this matter be referred to the district attorney's office." Patricia Vance tried to recover. "Your Honor, even if there was an affair, even if there were some financial irregularities, that doesn't—" "Some financial irregularities." Rachel's voice cut through the room. "The plaintiff has hidden over $120,000 in marital assets. She has attempted to manufacture evidence. She has engaged in witness tampering. She has threatened the respondent repeatedly. And her paramour attempted to bribe the respondent to drop the case. These aren't irregularities. This is a pattern of fraud and obstruction of justice." Judge Martinez held up her hand. "I've heard enough. Ms. Chen, stand up, please." Jennifer stood slowly. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Ms. Chen, I am freezing all marital assets effective immediately pending a complete forensic accounting. I am also referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of potential criminal conduct. And I am sanctioning you and your attorney for bringing false allegations of abuse to this court." She turned to Patricia Vance. "Ms. Vance, I've practiced law for 30 years. I've never seen such blatant misconduct from an attorney. Consider yourself fortunate. I'm not moving for disbarment proceedings immediately." Patricia Vance sat down heavily, her face white. "As for the witnesses the plaintiff has assembled," Judge Martinez continued, "I am ordering depositions of each one. If any of them have been paid or coerced into providing false testimony, they will face perjury charges. This hearing is adjourned. We'll reconvene in 30 days for full settlement proceedings, at which point Mr. Chen will present his counter-proposal." The gavel came down. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Jennifer stood, frozen, at her table. Blake had already left, probably calling his own divorce lawyer. Patricia Vance was gathering papers with shaking hands. I sat there feeling strangely calm. It was over. Not completely. There would still be settlement negotiations, final decrees, paperwork to sign. But the war was over. Jennifer had lost. Rachel leaned over. "How do you feel?" "Tired," I said. "Just tired." As we left the courtroom, I saw Jennifer in the hallway. She was alone. Patricia had abandoned her. Blake was gone. Even her witnesses had scattered. She looked at me, and for just a moment I saw something in her eyes. Not anger, not defiance, realization. She finally understood who I was, what I'd been before I'd walked away from that life. She'd spent 5 years watching me work a quiet job, living a simple life, and she'd assumed that was all there was to me. She'd never asked about my past, never wondered why a man with my education and skills was content with modest consulting work. She'd just assumed I'd failed, that I was weak, that I'd settled for less. Now she knew better. But it was far too late. The forensic accounting took 3 weeks. Daniel worked around the clock, tracing every dollar Jennifer had hidden, every transaction she'd tried to bury. By the time he was finished, the picture was even worse than I'd imagined. She hadn't just hidden $120,000. The total was closer to $240,000. Money moved through accounts I'd never heard of. Money spent on Blake Hensley, money used for a down payment on a condo in downtown Boston that I'd known nothing about. She'd been planning to leave me for over a year, systematically draining our assets while preparing her exit. Rachel used every piece of evidence like a weapon. By the time we went back to court for settlement proceedings, Jennifer had lost Patricia Vance. The lawyer had withdrawn from the case, probably to protect her own license. Jennifer's new attorney was young, overworked, and completely outmatched. The settlement hearing was nothing like the first one. This time, Jennifer sat at her table looking exhausted, defeated. She'd aged 10 years in 6 weeks. The confident executive was gone, replaced by a woman who'd lost everything. Judge Martinez reviewed the forensic accounting report. I watched her face as she read, saw her expression grow darker with each page. "Ms. Chen," she said finally, "I've practiced family law for 23 years. I've seen bad behavior. I've seen people lie, cheat, and steal from their spouses. But I have never seen such systematic, calculated financial fraud in a marriage. You didn't just have an affair. You didn't just hide some money. You spent 3 years methodically stealing from your husband while planning your exit." Jennifer said nothing. What could she say? "Mr. Chen, I've reviewed your counter-proposal," Judge Martinez continued. "You're requesting 70% of all marital assets, including the house. You're requesting full reimbursement for all hidden funds. And you're requesting that Ms. Chen pay your attorney's fees. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "Ms. Chen, do you wish to contest this proposal?" Jennifer's lawyer whispered something to her. She shook her head. "No, Your Honor." "Then I'm granting Mr. Chen's requests in full. Additionally, Ms. Chen, you are ordered to pay restitution of $240,000 for the funds you misappropriated. This will be deducted from your share of the remaining assets. If there are insufficient assets to cover this amount, you will be required to liquidate personal property or establish a payment plan." Rachel had done the math. After the restitution, after the 70-30 split, after attorney's fees, Jennifer would walk away with less than $40,000 from a marriage that had accumulated over $1 million in assets. "Furthermore," Judge Martinez said, "I am referring this matter to the Massachusetts Board of Bar Overseers for investigation of Ms. Patricia Vance's conduct and to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges related to witness tampering and attempted bribery." The gavel came down. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Rachel shook my hand. "I've been practicing law for 15 years. I've never seen a divorce turn around like this. She really had no idea who you were, did she?" "No," I said. "She never asked." The consequences for Jennifer came quickly and brutally. The district attorney filed charges, not just against her, but against Blake Hensley. Witness tampering, attempted bribery, financial fraud. Blake's company immediately suspended him pending investigation. His wife's divorce lawyer leaked the story to the press. And suddenly it was everywhere. Vice President involved in divorce bribery scandal. Blake's career was over. He ended up pleading guilty to lesser charges, paying massive fines and losing his job. His wife took him for everything in their divorce. As for Jennifer, she faced criminal charges too. Her new lawyer negotiated a plea deal. 3 years probation, community service, and permanent forfeiture of any claim to additional marital assets. The alternative was prison time. She took the deal, but the professional consequences were worse than the legal ones. Her company fired her immediately. Embezzlement, fraud, and bringing negative publicity. Her industry connections dried up overnight. No one wanted to hire the executive who'd stolen from her husband and tried to bribe him into silence. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved back in with her parents in Connecticut. She was working as a retail manager, making a fraction of what she'd earned before. Her social media accounts had gone dark. The carefully curated life she'd built had collapsed completely. Diane called me a few months after the settlement finalized. "I visited Jennifer last week," she said. "Marcus, she's not doing well. She's angry at everyone, me, you, Blake, her lawyers. She can't accept that she did this to herself. I'm sorry," I said. And I meant it. Not sorry enough to regret what I'd done, but sorry that it had come to this. Sorry that 22 years of marriage had ended in such spectacular destruction. "Are you?" Diane asked. "Sorry, I mean." I thought about it. "I'm sorry our marriage failed. I'm sorry she made the choices she made. But I'm not sorry I fought back. She tried to destroy me, Diane. She tried to take everything and paint me as an abuser in the process. I couldn't just let that happen." "I know," Diane said. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Jennifer needed to face consequences. Maybe someday she'll understand that. I sold the house 3 months after the divorce finalized. Too many memories, too much history. I bought a smaller place in New Hampshire, near the mountains, with enough land that my nearest neighbor was half a mile away. The money from the settlement, the 70%, the restitution, everything, I invested carefully. I didn't need much. I'd never needed much. But it was satisfying to know that I'd rebuilt what Jennifer had tried to take. As for work, I got a call from Morrison and Associates. They wanted me back. Senior partner position, my own team, choice of cases. The old life waiting for me if I wanted it. I thought about it for about 30 seconds before saying no. I'd proven what I needed to prove. I'd fought the battle and won. But I didn't need to go back to that world. I'd left it for good reasons, and those reasons still held. Instead, I started consulting again, but on my own terms. Small businesses, ethical cases, work I could walk away from at 5 o'clock. A life I could actually live. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about Jennifer. Wonder how she was doing. Wonder if she'd learned anything from what happened. Wonder if she ever thought about who I'd been before I'd met her. Before I'd chosen a quieter life. Probably not. Some people never learned. They just moved from one disaster to the next, always blaming others, never looking inward. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I was free. A year after the divorce finalized, I was sitting on the deck of my New Hampshire house, drinking coffee and watching the sun rise over the mountains. It was a Saturday in October, the leaves brilliant with color, the air crisp and clean. This was peace. Real, earned peace. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Saw the news. Thought you'd want to know." She'd attached a link to a Boston Globe article. The headline read, "Former marketing executive sentenced in fraud case." I skimmed it. Jennifer had apparently been caught embezzling from her retail job, small amounts, a few $1,000s, but enough to violate her probation. She was going to serve 18 months. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity, not vindication, just nothing. She'd made her choices, and those choices had consequences. That was all. Life had been good this past year. I'd started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I'd met interesting people, had good conversations, remembered what it felt like to be with someone who actually listened when I talked. I'd reconnected with old friends, the ones who'd drifted away during my marriage because Jennifer hadn't liked them. I'd taken up hiking seriously, joining a local group that did weekend trips through the White Mountains. I'd cooked more in the past year than in the previous 10. I'd read books, watched movies, learned to play chess again. Simple things. Good things. Daniel came to visit sometimes, bringing his family. His kids loved the mountains, loved having space to run around. We'd sit on the deck after dinner, drinking beer, talking about old cases, old times, but mostly about the present, about the work he was doing, the work I'd chosen to walk away from. Any regrets? He'd asked on his last visit. About leaving Morrison and Associates? No. About Jennifer? Sometimes. Not about how it ended. That was inevitable once I found out what she'd been doing. But I regret the wasted years. I regret not seeing who she really was sooner. You couldn't have known, Daniel said. She was good at hiding it. Maybe. Or maybe I hadn't wanted to see it. Either way, it was over now. I heard through the grapevine, Diane, mostly, about what had happened to Blake Hensley. After his legal troubles, his divorce, and losing his job, he'd tried to rebuild in a smaller market. But his reputation followed him. He ended up working as a regional sales manager for a company 1/10 the size of his former employer, making about a quarter of what he used to earn. His ex-wife had the house, the kids, and most of his retirement. He was living in a one-bedroom apartment and driving a 10-year-old car. Jennifer's witnesses, the ones she'd paid to lie, had faced their own consequences. 2 of them were charged with perjury and took plea deals. 1 lost her job. Another was ostracized from their social circle once the truth came out. Word spread fast in suburban Boston. Don't cross Marcus Chen. I didn't take pleasure in their suffering. I wasn't vindictive, but I wasn't sorry either. They'd made choices. Adults made choices and lived with the consequences. My life now was almost embarrassingly simple. I'd wake up early, make coffee, work for a few hours on whatever consulting project I had going. Lunch would be something I'd made myself. I'd become a decent cook, turns out. Afternoons were for hiking, reading, or just sitting on the deck and enjoying the silence. Evenings I'd sometimes video call with my sister in California, or meet up with friends in town for dinner. I'd started a small vegetable garden in the spring. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs. It was oddly satisfying, growing things, watching them develop from seeds to plants that actually produced food. Jennifer would have hated it. She'd always insisted on hiring landscapers, maintaining appearances. The idea of getting dirt under her fingernails would have horrified her. I thought about her sometimes, especially on days like this. Wondered if she was okay, if prison was as hard as I imagined. But I didn't feel responsible for where she'd ended up. I'd given her opportunities to settle reasonably. She'd chosen to fight dirty, to lie, to cheat, to try to destroy me. She'd lost, simple as that. My therapist, yes, I'd started seeing a therapist, said I was handling things remarkably well. No bitterness, no obsession, no lingering anger. Just acceptance. The marriage was over. That chapter of my life was closed. Now I was writing new chapters, better ones. Next month, I was planning a trip to Japan. I'd always wanted to go, but Jennifer had never been interested. Now I could go anywhere, do anything, answer to no one. Freedom, it turned out, was worth fighting for, and I'd won my freedom completely. So that's my story. A man in an old suit, underestimated by everyone, especially his wife. She thought I was nothing, worth nothing. She had no idea who she was really dealing with. Here's my question for you. What would you have done in my position? Would you have fought back, or would you have walked away? Would you have documented everything, or just accepted defeat? There are more stories like mine out there. Real people facing real challenges. Maybe you have one. If you do, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Thanks for listening. And remember, never underestimate the quiet ones. We're often the most dangerous. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.